It is the first story after paradise is lost. And it is the story of the first human death. But like everything in that primordial time, it is not what it seems. We are told of two brothers, Cain and Abel, the firstborn of a world scarred by newfound knowledge. Cain, a tiller of the ground, brought an offering to God from the fruit of the earth he had sweated to cultivate. His younger brother Abel, a shepherd, brought the firstborn of his flock, the fat portions, the easy prize. And the scripture tells us, with chilling simplicity, that God had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. Why? The text offers no explanation. No reason for the divine rejection. It is the first, and perhaps most profound, injustice in the human story. We are meant to accept it without question. But we will not. Because this single, unexplained act of favoritism sets in motion a tragedy that has defined our morality for millennia. Cain, his face fallen, confronts God in a dialogue that feels unnervingly modern. "Why are you angry?" God asks, almost tauntingly. "If you do well, will you not be accepted?" But Cain did do well. He brought the fruits of his labor, the result of his own ingenuity and struggle with the earth. What more could he do? It's a non-answer, a piece of circular logic designed to place the blame on the victim. And it is here, in this moment of divine gaslighting, that the seeds of true rebellion are sown. The story moves with a terrible speed. Cain lures his brother into the field. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. The first murder. A stain on the soul of mankind. A crime so heinous, it should demand the ultimate price. And yet, what happens next is the central mystery, the divine contradiction that shatters the entire narrative. God confronts Cain. "The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground," he says. The punishment is delivered. Cain is to be a restless wanderer on the earth, cursed from the ground that drank his brother's blood. But then Cain objects. He says his punishment is more than he can bear, that anyone who finds him will kill him. He is afraid of vengeance, of the natural law of blood for blood. And God's response is inexplicable. He does not say, "Yes, that is justice." Instead, he does the opposite. "Not so," says the Lord. "If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And then he does something that has puzzled theologians for centuries. He puts a mark on Cain. A sign. A sigil to ensure that no one who found him would dare attack him. Stop and consider the sheer insanity of this. The creator of the universe, faced with the first murderer, does not execute justice, but extends protection. He shields the killer. He places him under a special divine warranty, promising to brutally avenge any harm that might come to him. This action makes no moral sense. It makes no legal sense. It is the equivalent of a judge finding a murderer guilty and then assigning him an elite, heavily armed security detail for the rest of his life. It's a paradox so glaring it burns a hole in the scripture. It is a signal, a flashing red light, telling us that we are not being told the real story. We are being shown a play where the actors' motivations are hidden from us, and their roles have been deliberately reversed. To understand this divine protection, we have to unravel everything we think we know about these two brothers. The key isn't that God rejected Cain's offering, but why? The answer lies not in the quality of the sacrifice, but in what the two brothers truly represented, a cosmic struggle hidden in plain sight. To unlock this mystery, we must look closer, past the surface-level reading of the text and into the archetypal forces at play. Cain and Abel were not just two brothers with different jobs. They were living embodiments of two opposing worldviews, two divergent paths for the human soul. The scripture itself gives us the clue. Abel was a keeper of sheep. Consider what this means. A shepherd is a steward, a manager. He does not create life, he presides over it. His role is to maintain the existing order, to guide the flock, to protect it from external threats, and ultimately, to offer it up in sacrifice to a higher power. The shepherd's path is one of pistis, of faith, submission, and trust in the system as it is. He accepts the world given to him by the divine and operates within its established rules. His offering of the firstborn of his flock is symbolic of this. He gives back to God something God already created, a life for a life. It is an act of obedience, a demonstration that he understands his place as a caretaker within a preordained hierarchy. There is no transformation, only transaction. Now, look at Cain. He is described as a tiller of the ground. This is a profoundly different archetype. A tiller, a farmer, is an alchemist. He does not simply manage what exists, he actively collaborates with the raw material of the earth to bring forth something new. He must understand seasons, soil, and seed. He must innovate, experiment, and labor. He takes the soil, the prima materia, and through his own knowledge, sweat, and will, transforms it into sustenance. Cain's path is one of gnosis, of knowledge, creation, and the active pursuit of understanding. His offering of the fruit of the ground is not a life for a life. It is the product of his own craft. It is a symbol of human ingenuity, a testament to the power of the conscious mind to shape reality. He is not just giving back what was already there, he is presenting the result of a creative process, a partnership between man and nature. This was not a story about a farmer and a shepherd. It was an allegory for two foundational spiritual philosophies locked in a primordial conflict. On one side, Abel represents the way of blind faith, of passive acceptance, of living within the comfortable confines of dogma laid down by a superior authority. On the other side, Cain represents the way of applied knowledge, of active creation, of challenging the given reality to produce something new through personal effort and insight. One path is about servitude, the other about sovereignty. One is about managing the flock, the other about transforming the world. In this context, God's preference becomes terrifyingly clear. The being in this story did not value human creativity or the fruits of hard-won knowledge. It valued obedience. It favored the offering that reinforced the existing power structure, the shepherd who gives back what he was given. It rejected the offering that suggested a new, independent power, the alchemist who could create sustenance from the dirt through his own will. The rejection of Cain was the rejection of the human potential to become a creator in one's own right. It was a theological statement that innovation and self-wrought knowledge were an affront to the divine order. So, was this a simple story about two professions, or an allegory for two fundamentally different spiritual paths? One of active, inquisitive creation versus one of submissive, unquestioning faith. To understand why one path was favored over the other, we must examine the nature of the God they were making offerings to. And according to forbidden texts, the God of Eden was not the ultimate creator, he was something else entirely. The Bible we read today is a curated collection of texts, an anthology chosen by councils and committees centuries after they were written. But many other books, many other gospels and cosmologies, were left on the cutting room floor. These texts, now known as the Gnostic Gospels, were deemed heretical, not because they were fraudulent, but because they presented a radically different, and far more terrifying, version of reality. At the heart of the Gnostic worldview is a shocking claim that the God of the Old Testament, the God who created the material world, who walked in Eden, and who spoke to Cain, was not the true, ultimate God. He was an impostor. They called him by many names: Soklas, the fool; Samuel, the blind god, but most commonly, the demiurge. According to these forbidden texts, the true, transcendent God is a limitless, unknowable consciousness, the monad, the abyss. It exists beyond all form and conception. From this source, emanations, or eons, flowed forth, creating realms of pure light and spirit. But a cosmic accident occurred. One of these eons, a being named Sophia, or Wisdom, attempted to create on her own, without her divine consort. The result was an imperfect, aborted creation, a monstrous, ignorant being with the head of a lion and the body of a serpent. This was Yaldabaoth, the demiurge. Cast out of the higher spiritual planes, he found himself alone in the chaos of the lower darkness. Ignorant of the true God above him, he mistakenly believed he was the only being in existence. And so, with a mixture of arrogance and stolen divine power, he declared, "I am God, and there is no other God but me." He then proceeded to build a kingdom for himself. He fashioned the physical universe, the sun, the moon, the planets, and the earth. He created it as a flawed copy of the higher spiritual realms he dimly remembered, a prison of matter designed to trap the divine sparks of his mother, Sophia, that had become entangled in his creation. This being, the demiurge, is the God of Genesis. Look at his character as described in the Old Testament. He is jealous, demanding endless praise and sacrifice. He is wrathful, punishing humanity with floods and fire for perceived slights. He is controlling, setting arbitrary rules and forbidding access to knowledge, as with the tree in the garden. He walks in the garden in the cool of the day, a physical being, not an omnipresent spirit. He has to ask Adam, "Where are you?" and Cain, "Where is your brother?" He is not all-knowing. These are not the actions of an ultimate, transcendent creator. They are the actions of a territorial, insecure, and deeply flawed cosmic tyrant. If we reread the story of Cain and Abel through this lens, everything changes. The encounter is no longer a moral lesson from a benevolent God. It becomes a power struggle between a sovereign-minded human and his cosmic jailer. The demiurge, in his cosmic insecurity, could not abide Cain's offering. The fruit of the ground, born of knowledge and transformation, was a symbol of the very thing the demiurge feared most, the divine spark of creativity within humanity, the echo of the true God that he could not control. Abel's offering, an obedient sacrifice of a life form the demiurge himself had made, was acceptable because it reinforced the master-servant dynamic. Cain's offering, a product of human ingenuity, was a declaration of independence. It was a whisper of the Gnostic truth, that humans are not merely creatures of the demiurge, but contain within them a spark of the real God, a power that allows them to become co-creators of their own reality. If the God who walked in Eden and spoke with Cain was this flawed creator, then his judgment is not divine, but tyrannical. The rejection of Cain's offering suddenly shifts from a moral lesson to an act of cosmic insecurity. To this flawed God, Cain wasn't just a disobedient farmer. He was a dangerous revolutionary. But why? What knowledge did Cain possess that made him such a threat? If Cain's offering was rejected by a flawed creator, what was he offering that this God couldn't understand or accept? The answer redefines the very nature of the original sin in the Garden of Eden. To understand Cain's forbidden knowledge, we must return to the scene of the first crime, not the field where Abel fell, but the garden where his parents first opened their eyes. The official story is a cautionary tale. A cunning serpent tricked Eve into eating a forbidden fruit, dooming humanity to sin and death. It is the foundation of original sin, the idea that we are born broken and in need of redemption from an authority figure. But the Gnostics saw this story in a completely inverted way. To them, the serpent was not a tempter. It was a hero. It was an emissary of Sophia, the divine wisdom, sent from the higher spiritual realms to liberate the beings trapped in the demiurge's material zoo. The Garden of Eden wasn't a paradise, it was a gilded cage, a state of ignorant bliss designed to keep Adam and Eve docile and controllable, like well-cared-for livestock. The demiurge had forbidden them from eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, not to protect them, but to keep them ignorant of their true nature and his own inferiority. He wanted to remain their sole source of reality, the master of their perception. The serpent, therefore, did not bring sin. It brought gnosis. The Greek word gnosis does not mean simple intellectual knowledge, like memorizing facts. It means direct, personal, experiential knowledge of the divine. It is the inner awakening, the realization that you possess a spark of God within you. The fruit wasn't a physical apple. It was a metaphor for enlightenment. When Eve, and then Adam, partook of this fruit, they didn't fall. They woke up. Their eyes were opened, and they saw for the first time. They saw that they were naked, not just physically, but spiritually, that they were divine beings trapped in animal bodies. They saw the demiurge for what he was, not the ultimate creator, but a lesser, jealous god. And he knew it. His reaction was not that of a loving father disciplining his children, but of a panicked tyrant whose prisoners had just discovered the key to their cell. He curses them, not because they sinned, but because they became like one of us, knowing good and evil. He fears they will now reach for the tree of life and gain immortality, breaking free of his cycle of material birth and death forever. This Gnostic awakening, this spark of divine self-awareness, became the secret inheritance passed down from Eve to her children. Abel, the shepherd, represents the path that chose to ignore this awakening, to return to a state of obedience and worship of the demiurge, hoping for favor within the system. But Cain, Eve's firstborn, is the true inheritor of the serpent's gift. As a tiller of the ground, he embodies the Gnostic path. He takes the material world, the ground, and uses his inner knowledge, the gnosis, to cultivate and transform it. He is the spiritual successor to Eve's enlightenment. So, when Cain brought his offering to the demiurge, he wasn't just bringing vegetables. On a symbolic level, he was offering the fruits of his own consciousness, the products of his Gnostic understanding. He was approaching the demiurge not as a supplicant, but as a fellow creator, an equal. To the insecure demiurge, this was the ultimate blasphemy. It was a direct challenge to his authority, a reminder that the divine spark he sought to control was alive and well in humanity. He had to reject it. He had to make an example of Cain to show that the path of gnosis leads to ostracization and pain. He had to champion Abel's path of blind faith as the only way to receive divine favor. Cain, a descendant of this Gnostic awakening, wasn't just offering fruits from the ground. He was offering the fruits of self-attained knowledge, an act of spiritual sovereignty that the demiurge would see as the ultimate rebellion. With this new understanding of a Gnostic struggle against a flawed creator, we must now turn our gaze to the central act of the drama, the murder of Abel. The image is seared into our collective consciousness, a brutal, physical act of fratricide born of simple jealousy. But if the characters are allegories and the god is a tyrant, then the crime itself must also be something more than what it appears. The Gnostics were masters of symbolism. To them, the physical world was a dark mirror of spiritual realities. They believed that sacred texts were written in layers, with a literal meaning for the uninitiated, the psychics, and a deeper, spiritual meaning for those with gnosis, the pneumatics. Let us peel back the literal layer of the story. The murder of Abel is not the story of one man killing another. It is the allegory of a spiritual principle superseding another. Cain, representing the path of gnosis, of active, internal knowledge, rises up against Abel, who represents pistis, the path of blind, external faith. The field where this takes place is the field of consciousness itself. This is not a crime scene, it is a stage for an internal, psychological, and spiritual revolution. For the soul to evolve, the Gnostic believes it must move beyond simple, handed down belief systems. The part of the psyche that is content with unquestioning obedience, Abel, must be slain or transcended by the part that seeks direct experience and self-generated understanding, Cain. It is a rite of passage. The awakened mind realizes it can no longer coexist with the simplistic, comfortable beliefs of its past. To truly grow, the old way must die. The blood of Abel crying from the ground is not literal blood. It is the echo of the abandoned faith, the psychic trauma that comes with shattering a worldview. When the demiurge says, "The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me," he is saying that the system of blind faith is crying out to its master because it has been overcome by the power of individual knowledge. The curse that follows is, from the demiurge's perspective, a just punishment. Cain is cursed from the ground, meaning he is cut off from the easy, passive existence promised to the obedient. It will no longer yield its strength to him. He is forced to become a restless wanderer, forever seeking, forever questioning, unable to rest in the comfortable certainty of a belief system he has transcended. The demiurge casts him out, not just from his family, but from the entire paradigm of faith-based reality that he controls. This is the fate of the Gnostic, to be an outsider to the mainstream systems of belief, to be seen as a heretic, an iconoclast, a dangerous wanderer in the wilderness of thought. The story isn't a simple warning against jealousy. It's a coded depiction of the spiritual journey. It reveals that at a certain point, the pursuit of truth requires a radical break from tradition, an act that will always be framed as a monstrous crime by the keepers of that tradition. Cain did not kill his brother. He killed an idea within himself. He killed the slave to save the soul. So if the murder was an allegory, then the punishment, the wandering and the curse, must also be something other than what it seems. What if the exile wasn't a punishment, but a mission? Now we arrive at the story's most enigmatic symbol, the mark of Cain. For thousands of years, it has been interpreted as a brand of shame, a divine scar marking him as the world's first outcast, a pariah to be shunned. But this interpretation only makes sense if the God who bestowed it is just and benevolent. If the God is the flawed demiurge, the mark becomes something else entirely. It becomes an act of cosmic chess, a move so subtle and profound it has been misread for millennia. Let's revisit the scene. Cain, cast out, expresses fear. "Anyone who finds me will kill me." He fears the agents of the system he has just defied, the followers of the demiurge's law of vengeance. The demiurge's response is swift and absolute, not so. He promises a sevenfold vengeance upon anyone who harms Cain. Then he places the ot, the Hebrew word for sign or mark, upon him. Why would a tyrant protect the one being who represents the greatest threat to his rule? Because he has no choice. The Gnostic texts reveal that while the demiurge controls the material world, he is not the ultimate power. Above him exists the true God, the realm of the pleroma, from which the divine spark within humanity originates. The mark of Cain is not a brand of shame from the demiurge. It is a seal of protection from the true, higher God. It is a sign that Cain, as the first true Gnostic, the first human to fully embrace the serpent's gift and slay his inner slave of faith, has been placed under a higher spiritual jurisdiction. The demiurge, in his limited power, recognizes the seal. He cannot defy it. The mark is a warning, not to humanity, but to the invisible forces of the demiurge, his archons, his agents of control. The message is clear: this one is not yours. He belongs to another, higher power. Do not touch him. The sevenfold vengeance is not a promise from the demiurge, it's a statement of the cosmic law he is forced to acknowledge. The number 7 in esoteric traditions often represents the 7 celestial spheres, the planetary realms ruled by the demiurge and his archons. The promise of sevenfold vengeance means that the entire system of cosmic control will be brought down upon any of its agents who dare to interfere with this protected individual. The mark is therefore the ultimate irony. It is a symbol of divine election masquerading as a curse of damnation. It is a get-out-of-jail-free card for the soul. The demiurge curses Cain with his mouth, exiling him from his controlled garden of faith, but is simultaneously forced by a higher power to guarantee his safety. He has to let his greatest enemy go free, protected by a power he cannot fight. Cain's exile is not aimless wandering, it is a deployment. He is being sent out from the world of the demiurge, the world of Abel, to begin a new project for humanity. He is now a free agent of the true God, tasked with building a world based on Gnosis, not Pistis. He is the first man freed from the Matrix, now untouchable by its agents. The mark of Cain is not a scarlet letter. It is a divine passport. It asks the sign that you have graduated from the demiurge's school of fear and have been enrolled in a higher curriculum. It is the brand of the spiritual revolutionary, the seal of the liberated mind. Protected by this higher power and exiled from the demiurge's world of blind faith, Cain doesn't just wander aimlessly. He does something extraordinary. He builds a city, but what kind of city is built by the world's first Gnostic sage? Cain's journey into the land of Nod, which in Hebrew, Eretz Nod, means the land of wandering, is not a tale of aimless desperation. It is the story of a founder, a builder, a pioneer of a new human consciousness. The curse of wandering was not a sentence to be endured, but a principle to be embraced. The Gnostic understands that truth is not a fixed destination, but a continuous journey of seeking. And on this journey, the scripture tells us, Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. This is a staggering piece of information hidden in plain sight. The world's first murderer, the supposed villain of all humanity, becomes the world's first city builder. While the lineage of the faithful Abel was extinguished, the lineage of the enlightened Cain became the very foundation of organized human society. This was not just any city. The city of Enoch, named after Cain's son, whose name means initiated or dedicated, represents the antithesis of Eden. Eden was a garden given by God, a place of passive reception where the rules were set by an external authority. Enoch was a city built by man, a testament to human will, intellect, and craft. It was the first metropolis of the mind, a place where knowledge, not faith, was the cornerstone. Look at the legacy of Cain's descendants, as listed in Genesis 4. They are not priests or prophets. They are innovators. There is Jabal, the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock, representing the mastery of architecture and nomadic exploration. There is his brother Jubal, the father of all those who play the lyre and pipe, the inventor of music, the language of the soul that transcends words and dogma. And most importantly, there is tubal-cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. This is the birth of metallurgy, of alchemy, of technology. Cain's lineage gave humanity art, science, and industry. They gave us the tools to transform our world, to create beauty, to defend ourselves, and to build complex societies. They are the mythological fathers of civilization itself. This is the Gnostic project in action. The city is the ultimate symbol of human collaboration and knowledge. It is a system built not on divine command, but on shared understanding and technological prowess. The arts, music, and metallurgy are not mere trades, they are expressions of the divine spark within, the ability to manipulate the material world of the demiurge to create things of beauty, harmony, and power. The demiurge had offered a simple, pastoral existence in exchange for servitude. Cain's lineage offered a complex, challenging, but ultimately sovereign existence through the power of the human intellect and spirit. The question becomes unavoidable: was Cain the father of sin, or the father of civilization itself? His lineage brought forth the very tools that elevate humanity beyond mere subsistence, allowing for the creation of beauty and the pursuit of knowledge, all outside the demiurge's pastoral prison. But if this powerful, protected lineage of knowledge existed, where did it go? The story doesn't end with Cain. His descendants are listed, and their story leads directly to another great cataclysm, one seemingly designed to wipe this enlightened bloodline off the face of the earth. The story of Cain is the story of a seed of Gnosis planted in the soil of the material world. His city and his descendants were its first fruits, a civilization founded on knowledge, art, and technology. But any system of control, especially one as vast as the demiurge's, will not tolerate a thriving pocket of rebellion for long. The success of Cain's lineage was a direct threat, a proof of concept that humanity could achieve greatness without him. The Bible itself documents the demiurge's growing frustration. Genesis 6 states, "The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that he regretted that he had made man." But what was this wickedness? Was it violence and theft, or was it the Gnostic wickedness of becoming like gods, of claiming spiritual sovereignty? From the demiurge's perspective, the civilization of Cain was a cancer of enlightenment that needed to be excised. And so, he initiated a planetary reset button. The Great Flood. The official narrative presents it as a cleansing of sin, a purification of the world. But through the Gnostic lens, it is revealed as an act of genocide, a targeted campaign to exterminate the lineage of Cain and wipe its dangerous knowledge from the face of the earth. It was the demiurge's final, brutal attempt to hit delete on the Enoch project and restore the world to a more manageable, faith-based stable state with a new, more obedient protagonist, Noah. And this brings us to the most crucial realization of all. The story we have inherited, the Bible as it is compiled, is not an objective history of the world. It is propaganda. History is always written by the victors, and in this cosmic war between Gnosis and Pistis, between knowledge and faith, the victors were the followers of the demiurge. The theological tradition that survived and was institutionalized was the one that favored Abel's path, the path of obedience, submission, and faith in an external authority. To solidify their power, they had to demonize the opposition. They took Cain, the Gnostic hero, the first enlightened man, and skillfully recast him as the archetypal villain. They took his murder of dogma and literalized it into a fratricide. They took his seal of divine protection and painted it as a mark of shame. They took his city of civilization and implied it was the root of all wickedness. We live inside their story. We have inherited a worldview meticulously crafted to make us fear our own potential. It is a brilliant control system that convinces the prisoners it is a sanctuary, that teaches us to be suspicious of our own intellect, to shun the serpent of wisdom, and to see the pursuit of forbidden knowledge as the ultimate sin. The entire narrative is a weapon designed to keep humanity in a state of spiritual childhood, forever looking to an outside power for answers, permission, and salvation. We have been taught to see Cain as a monster, when in reality, his story is the story of our own suppressed power. He is the rebel spirit in all of us that questions authority, that seeks to create rather than merely obey, that dares to believe the kingdom of heaven might be found within, not without. The mark of Cain, therefore, is not just an ancient story. It is a symbol that persists today, a choice we all face every single day. It is the choice between the comfortable safety of belief, the world of Abel, and the dangerous, liberating, and often lonely path of knowing, the world of Cain. The question is, which path are you on?